we continue to see confusion on this concept called national divorce. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is another declaration of truth from your host, Terry A. Hurlbut. When Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, representing the 1st District of Georgia, revived her concept of national divorce, she set the whole country buzzing. But I have, so far, found no commentator besides myself who understands what Representative Greene was talking about. I don't mean, which is not to say that her proposal would end well. I told you all 2 days ago it would not, and that still goes. But it is to say that some people can't even read what other people write. In fact, I say the national divorce concept would not work as Greene spelled it out, and it would be a last resort, a bitter last resort as everyone else thinks he understands it. I'm going to try again to sort out the confusion, and then I'm going to suggest an alternative that the 2021 term of the United States Supreme Court now makes possible. Before I do want to shout out to the prime sponsor of this channel, which is Conservative News and Views. Link in the description. Be sure to check out the awesome CNAV Store. Scroll down near the bottom for that link. Lots of great merchandise there, especially this t-shirt that I've chosen for today, which reads, "Freedom isn't free." And indeed it isn't. And I don't hold with throwing it away for anyone, no matter where he lives. Don't worry, I will make everything clear. And one more thing, if you like what you're about to hear, you can like this video. You can also click the bell icon to get a notice every time I come out with a new one. In fact, do you see the new icon, the heart shape with the US dollar sign in it? That's the super thanks icon. If you really want to keep these videos coming, click that and leave me a tip. Any currency will do, so long as it's legal tender. Now then, to review. Marjorie Taylor Greene first set forth 2 elements of her national divorce proposal on New Year's Eve 2021. Actually, she simply agreed with one other commentator who suggested them first. The first element of her original national divorce proposal was a durational residency requirement for U.S. citizens moving into red states from blue states. Durational residency means offering voter registration only to those who have been residents for a minimum time, say 1 year. In 1972, the Supreme Court ruled durational residency unconstitutional. Dunn versus Blumstein, 405 U.S. 330, 1972. Obviously, implementing this element means overruling that precedent. States might then reciprocally waive durational residency for citizens moving between them, but only with the consent of the Congress, Article 10, Section 2, and I'll get to that in a moment. Her second suggestion, actually, I don't think she made it, but she accepted this suggestion from someone else, was a sin tax for former blue state voters. While the Supreme Court has heard no case on point, I doubt the court would ever allow it. It would be a bill of attainder, declaring an entire class of people liable for a fine. In any case, no state has ever charged an entry fee for establishing domicile. On President's Day, MTG mentioned national divorce again and offered the results she sought. Under it, each state government would have full power to impose whatever regime it wanted upon its residents. Many federal functions would devolve upon the states, hence the federal government would be much smaller, but only the red states would respect the rights most of their residents hold dear. The blue states would not, and the federal courts would not interfere. Now just think about what that would mean. Dobbs versus Jackson. Now Dobbs versus Jackson, women's, would remain. It specifically says that when it comes to management of pregnancy, that is for state governments, not the federal courts won't get into it anymore. But here's the thing. that would also apply to your right to keep and bear arms, and to your freedom of religion, which would fall in the blue states to everyone else's freedom from religion. New York State Rifle and Pistol versus Bruin, gone. Carson versus Fagan, gone. Kennedy versus Providence School, gone. I'll get to all that later. But first, Jack Posobiec talked about Greene's proposal 2 days ago in the first 8 minutes of his program, called Human Events Daily. Human Events has a Rumble channel, and I've left a link in the description to Human Events Daily, episode number 402. In it, Poso quoted several leftist commentators on various morning shows. Clearly, those commentators did not understand the Greene proposal. Neither did Poso, whom I hold in the highest esteem. Why do I say he didn't understand? Because he defined national divorce as secession. With that in mind, here is what he said about it. Quote, "This is not viable, it is not possible, and I really don't think that we should be spending that much time talking about it. I think that people might be saying it for good reasons and well-meaning reasons, but it's also not going to happen." Unquote, Jack Posobiec. At least Poso hopes it will not happen because civil war would, in his view, be the inevitable result. Perhaps he did not account for the cases of secession by mutual agreement. He did, however, suggest that war would result over time, if not immediately. Todd Starnes almost admitted as much in his own commentary. He said, quote, "Our states have all the food, guns, and our women folk are actually women," unquote, Todd Starnes. Them's fighting words, Todd, old buddy. And the thing is, the army of the blue would attack the army of the red if only to seize the food. So says Poso. And you know what? That's hard to argue with. So I rate secession as positively the last resort for freedom lovers. Are there any secession movements that have gone beyond the talking stage? So far, one international secession movement exists, the Texit movement. The Texas Nationalist movement, to whom I've left a link in the description, will try again this year to place on the ballot a referendum to create a Texas Secession Study Committee. The last time they tried that, Texas State House leaders chubbed the measure. That is, they killed it with procedural delays. But some of the chubbers lost re-election in 2022. Furthermore, TNM claims 66% support from their fellow Texans, according to a recent poll. The most prominent interstate secession movement is the Greater Idaho movement, to whom I have also left a link in the description. 11 Oregon counties have voted thus far to secede from their state and join Idaho. Last week, the Idaho House of Representatives voted 41-28 to invite them to join. In history, 4 other states have formed as breakaway states. They are Kentucky from Virginia, Maine from Massachusetts, and Alabama and Mississippi from Georgia. West Virginia doesn't count. That secession was more like a capture during the war between the states. Never before have a group of counties actually left one state to join another. In any case, such changes require the consent of any state legislature concerned as well as of the Congress. Now, I'm going to talk again about my specific problems with the national divorce idea. Before I do, I want to shout out to a sponsor who can really help you learn to live an exceptional, help you through the economic storms to come. That sponsor is oursilverlives.com. If you feel like you're working harder for your money just to get by, you are not alone. The fluctuating economy, employment issues, and unexpected changes in life have left many families struggling over the past few years. Collecting gold and silver can help shield you against many of these challenges. But if you're like me many years ago, you don't know where or how to start. Our Silver Lines helps by connecting you with thousands of members who are learning the secrets to creating and protecting true wealth by collecting precious metals. And whether you just want to collect rare and unique coins or take advantage of the business opportunities this company provides, either way, they can help you learn to live an exceptional life. Visit oursilverlines.com to learn how you can build a legacy for your future. Now, Poso has a problem with national divorce. I have a problem with national divorce, but they're not the same problems, because Poso and Greene have two different ideas, although Poso probably doesn't realize it. And again, I don't know who does, besides myself and Representative Greene. If any of you get the idea that Greene did not propose secession, leave me a comment. For that matter, if you want to ask me why I say that or what difference it makes, leave a comment for that too. Just remember to keep it simple. Marjorie Taylor Greene's national divorce to become real involves two specific changes. First, it means dissolving most cabinet departments. As I said 2 days ago, the departments of State, Treasury, Defense, and Justice would remain. These departments deal with the core functions of any government and must exist at the federal level. The State Department would take over the Census Bureau and Immigration and Naturalization. Perhaps the Treasury Department would share the customs function with the State Department. Passport issuance to citizens and passport control for incoming visitors and returning citizens is always a State Department function or a foreign ministry function in other countries. Border protection would go to defense, where it belongs. Homeland security would devolve to the states, but that would require the second step, which is that the Constitution will require drastic amendment to enhance states' rights and state power, as Greene proposes, would require the outright repeal of Article 1, Section 10. It would be up to states to decide whether they wanted to pass bills of attainder or ex post facto laws, coin money, print money, or, well, I don't expect them to grant titles of nobility, but everything else in Section 10, you betcha. Duties and imposts on imports and exports, check. Duties of tonnage, check. Real, we mean business troops and warships in peacetime, check. Furthermore, states would gain the power to ignore the federal courts on matters of qualifications of electors, alleged deprivations of life, liberty, or property with or without due process of law, or even recognition of the right to keep and bear arms. So just imagine, you're driving across country, you're driving state to state, then you have to slow down because there's a long line of cars to get into Colorado. Why? To clear Colorado customs. So you finally get to the head of the line, and some pink-helmeted border cop says, license and registration. In other countries, they would say, your papers, please. Then he goes on, have you anything to declare? Any alcohol, tobacco, firearms? Oops, we have to confiscate those. And what's that? A Bible? You're not allowed to bring that kind of hate lit into our state. Hand it over. Is that what you want? Because you're going to get it with a national divorce. Now, having thrown cold water on MTG's idea, I have to come up with an alternative, don't I? Of course I do. Seriously, that's only fair. And it's easier than you think. I don't think MTG realizes the extent of the sea change that came about in the 2021 term of the United States Supreme Court. That court handed down several thunderclap rulings that will let freedom lovers push back against the administrative state. That applies not only at the federal level, but also at the state level. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin came as close as ever to establishing an absolute right to keep and bear arms. Private owners of guns could push for that absolute right. Well, subject only to a decision by a judge, that's the due process of law clause. But they can push as hard as pro-life people did with their struggle. Yes, many states are defying Bruin, so sue them again and again until the Supreme Court says enough. If it takes 50 years, fine. Go for it. Carson versus Macon is even more important, as is Kennedy versus Bremerton School District. Carson especially renders unconstitutional every federal law, or state constitutional article that mandates or allows discrimination on the part of the government against people of faith. 12 states, Arkansas, Connecticut, Iowa, Maine, Maryland, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Rhode Island, Tennessee, Vermont, and West Virginia, never had Blaine amendments. Louisiana had one, but repealed it. Every state that still has one should repeal it. And every state that doesn't have one should stop acting as if it does. That includes the state of Maine, which got its clock cleaned in the Carson case, but it should also apply to the states of New Jersey, Rhode Island, and Vermont. And in every state that still has a Blaine Amendment, I want to see people teeing up lawsuits to challenge it as contrary to the federal Constitution. Article 6, Section 2. Supreme law of the land. Look it up. The Supreme Court also severely weakened the administrative state, at least at the federal level. In West Virginia versus EPA, the court held that some things must be a matter of legislation, not rulemaking. The court further held that technocracy, meaning relying on the experts, does not accord with the Constitution either. Here we see the other flaw in the Marjorie Taylor Greene national divorce proposal. It starts by abolishing all except for federal cabinet departments. That's a good thing. But then it invites states to establish their own equivalents of the departments that were removed and to make just the sort of arbitrary rules the Biden administration would like to make. If you lose your rights, it doesn't matter whether the order came from Washington or Sacramento or Albany or Trenton or Salem or Olympia or Springfield or Annapolis or Richmond. Nor does it matter whether you lose your rights to a city government or a higher government. So if a state or local government is abridging the Bill of Rights, sue them. The Constitution does forbid some powers to the states, as well as reserving others. Freedom-loving people cannot allow any state within something called the United States to revoke the Bill of Rights, or any part of it. Nor can they allow states to be arbitrary or capricious with administrative power. And we certainly don't want to see states set up customs checkpoints to stop people from bringing guns or Bibles into or through their territories. A national divorce no longer looks attractive when you consider the rights some people might lose under it. Link in the description of the article to Poso's video saying what's wrong with what he thinks the national divorce proposal was, to the Texas Nationalist movement, to Greater Idaho, to my Declarations of Truth Twitter account, and to Conservative News and Views. I've also left links to the awesome CNAV Store and to oursilverlines.com, as I also mentioned. You know already about how to like a video, turn on notifications, and leave a tip. On the end screen, I'm going to leave a subscribe link to my channel and links to my Supreme Court playlist, to yesterday's national divorce video, and to another video that I'm sure that I'll find about national divorce from an outside influencer. This is Terry A. Hurlbut delivering another declaration of truth and reminding you to let the truth set you free.